Om Ajnana
Om Ajnana
Timirandhasya
Timirandasya
Jnananjana
Jnananjana
Shalakaya
Shalakaya
Chakshur
Yakshur
Unmilitam Yena
Unmilitam Yena
Tasmai Sri
Tasmai Shri
Gurave Namaha.
Gurave Namaha.
So this is the prayers that is offered to the Guru to please open our eyes to
Okay, ma'am.
receive the knowledge. Okay. We say, right, Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityoma Amritangamaya. Ante tamas నుంచి డార్క్నెస్ నుంచి లైట్కి అండ్ ఇగ్నరెన్స్ నుంచి నాలెడ్జ్కి మనల్ని తీసుకువెళ్ళమని ఇట్స్ అ ప్రేయర్. Fine. So today is our fourth session of Discover Yourself, and I congratulate each and every one of you who is present here. Yes, Pranita, Divya, Chetana, Indu, Bhavana, Kavya, Kirtana, Madhushri, Munilakshmi, Navya, Rajeshwari, Varshini, and Jyoti, Lasya and Gayatri Priya. I congratulate each and every one of you because you have made it to this point. Because only those who are very serious about understanding the goal of life and the purpose of life, they will spend their time and energy and their intelligence in knowing the deeper aspects of reality. So it is not in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, yeah, uh, that out of millions, one will try to endeavor me. One will try to achieve me. So it's very, very, very rare. Yeah, and it also happens after millions of births. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyante. Vasudevam sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. That is, after millions of births, a person will rarely try to understand what is the absolute truth, and out of them, very rarely one will attain me. This is what Krishna tells in Gita. So you are few among those very rare individuals who are taking interest in understanding what is spirituality and what is goal of life and how it is relevant to me and my life. So with this today we're going to begin a very, very important session. In fact, this is a very foundational subject matter of spirituality, the science of the self or the science of the soul. So last 3 weeks, we have discussed about three important aspects. The first week we discussed about who is the mastermind behind this mysterious universe. And in the second session, we have discussed about how we can access the truth or real knowledge by, despite our four defects. And the source of this authentic knowledge is Vedas. This is what we learned in the second session. And in the third session, that is last session, we have learned about how Vedic literature gives us an understanding about what is everlasting happiness and how to attain to that state. And we have also seen how in this material world, our search for happiness is always baffled with, four real problems and threefold miseries. We have seen about all this. And today in this session, fourth session, we will discuss about what is actually our true identity. Why is it important to know what is our true identity? So we have understood that there is a mastermind, this is behind this mysterious universe. So, and who is actually God, who is in charge of everything. So who am I? After understanding who is God, let me understand who am I and what is my relationship with God. So when you know your true identity, this is the origin of lasting self-confidence. Like in the initial days, you all have asked me what you're expecting from this course. You all said you all want to be more confident individuals, more positive individuals. Yeah, and you want to acquire great leadership qualities. So the basis of all this is actually seated in knowing what is our true identity. Because without understanding the self, how will you develop self confidence? Isn't it? So, first, let us understand who is the self, then confidence will automatically come. All bewilderment or unhappiness or uncertainty is because we are confused about who we really are. But the day we know and understand who we really are, then we will understand what is our purpose. Then self confidence automatically comes. So today is that journey into our true self. So today you are going to really discover who your real self is. So every day morning you all wake up and you look into the mirror. And today I will tell you a reality. You're not that person whom you're looking at in the mirror. You're different from that. So let us unravel this mystery. So with due gratitude to Radheshyam Das Prabhuji for giving us this course, we will move ahead and start the session. Okay, so before we start the session, I'll ask you one question. You have seen the girl, that little cute girl, and she's holding a cute doll in her hand. What is the difference between that girl and the doll?
The girl is living, the doll is non-living matter.
Okay, very good. The girl is living, she's full of life, and the doll is not living, she has no life. Okay, any other? Okay, I will ask you the next question. The next question is, what is it that makes the girl alive? Somebody gave another answer. Kavya, can you read the chat for me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Nothing is there in the chat, ma'am.
Nothing is written? Okay. I thought something was expressed. Fine. So one of you.
Yes, ma'am, it's written now.
Yeah.
Shaikh Nafiza, it's written soul.
Oh, you came to the answer. Very good, Nafiza. Yes. So we will go. Today we will see the division of the session. We're going to read about, am I matter or am I spirit? We're going to see the 6 changes of the living body. We're going to see about the scientific proofs for existence of anti-material personality, or the proof of the soul, in other words. We're going to see about the mechanism of reincarnation. What is the difference between soul and God? And what are the practical benefits of knowledge of soul in everyday life? Yeah, so we all have realized that we are not this body, we are not with the soul. So how is it relevant to me in my practical life? Does it have any relevance, or is it just some kind of a extra knowledge that I have acquired, keep it in one corner of the mind and just close it? No, it has very practical relevance. So we will see all that today. Just a second. Eyeball. Yes. So the first one, am I matter or am I spirit? So there is this, the very first one. The first one, am I matter or am I spirit? So there is this professor of anatomy who has done a lot of research to find out what exactly are the elements that constitute this body. Yes. So he tried to analyze them. What is this body composed of? What are the elements that make up the body? And he has come up with the percentages. Yeah, he's a person, Harry Monson. He's a professor of anatomy at Illinois College of Medicine. So he has kind of segregated each element, one, what is its proportion that makes the body. So he came up with many elements like calcium, phosphate, potassium, sulfur, sodium, iron, copper, iron. And he, after isolating all these elements, he kind of tried to calculate what is the net worth of all these elements that are constituting the body. So, you know, what is the conclusion after all this research? He said that this body is composed of elements which, when we calculate the net worth, it comes to a bag of chemicals which is 110 rupees. This body which we are so fond of, which we relate to so much, which we love so much, which we try to decorate, you know, every day, day in and day out. You know, we love to take our selfies so often, right? So what is the worth of that body? It is 110 rupees. So is this all what my worth is, or am I worth something more than that? So this is his conclusion, 110. So will you agree that, you know, I'm just worth 110 rupees? I'm sure none of us are happy to know that. So then what is our real worth and what is our real identity? So if you think that you're this body, then what is it like? For example, sometimes, especially in these days, we are in the amidst the pandemic, where so many of our relatives and near and dear friends are dying. So when a person dies, you know, we cry for that person, right? And we say that, "Arey, so and so, you know, వెళ్ళిపోయావా అంటాం." Right? This is what we generally see, right? This, you sit in front of the body, and if you see any of the relatives crying, generally how does a cry naturally come out? You know, మమ్మల్ని విడిచి వెళ్ళిపోయావా, right? You know, you have left us, but the body is lying right in front of you. Then who has gone? Right?
Soul.
Yeah, it's a common sense. So it's a common sense understanding that if the same body to touch, you know, sometimes we have to, if we touch some children, we sanitize our hands and touch, yeah, so that they you know, they don't get infected with our germs. So the same body, what is it, the presence of which is making it so adorable, and the absence of which is making it so abominable? See, a dead body, if you see a dead body, you cannot keep the dead body for long because it starts stinking, because it starts rapidly decomposing once, you know, the soul leaves the body. So, you know, we all say, oh, you're gone. So who is gone? The body is lying right in front of you. So what is the particle, you know, which when it is present in the body, making it alive and so adorable, and in the absence of which it has become so abominable that you don't want to touch it. In fact, if you touch it, you have to go take a bath, isn't it? We have our traditions, right? If you go and visit a house of a dead person, after you come home, you have to first take a bath outside and then only step into the house. We all follow that, right? Because the body is considered very impure. The same body, when it is, when the person is alive, it is so adorable. You embrace the body, you love that body, and even to touch it, you see that you're clean. But the very same body, when something is lost from the body, it becomes so abominable, it becomes so untouchable, so much so that if you touch it, you have to wash your hands. So what is it that is missing?
Soul.
Yes. Yeah, this is what the beauty queen, once she leaves the body, what happens? The same person who's so glamorous, who's attracting so many people to her, once something is lost from her body, nobody want to look at it, right? We have seen like couple of years ago, Sri Devi, the famous actress of India, she has died. Yeah, but you see her body. Was it as beautiful as before? No. So what is it, the presence of which is making the body so beautiful, the absence of which is making the body so abominable? Let's see. So Krishna says the soul is eternal in nature. Yeah, it neither has birth nor death at any time. Yeah, न जायते म्रियते व कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूया अजो नित्यं शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. This is what is described in Gita about the nature of the soul. So the soul it has no birth, no death at any time. Yeah, so he has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. That means it is eternal. That means there was never a time that the soul did not exist, nor will there be a time it will not exist. It will continue to exist in the past, present, and future. Eternal means that which has no death. That is the nature of the soul. It's unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. That's what I said. Ajo nityam, shashvatoyam purano. Aja, unborn, nityam, eternal, shashvato, ever existing, purano, primeval. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. He is not slain even when the body is slain. So this is what it is. It is given in the scripture Gita in the 2nd chapter 20th verse that this soul is not slain. Slain means it's not dead even when the body is slain. Even when the body dies, the soul continues to exist. This is the Praman, the Shastra Praman given in Gita. So this is the basic understanding. This is the foundational concept of the understanding of the soul. In fact, the science of the soul is so beautifully explained in the Gita in the 2nd chapter from 10th verse onwards to 30th verse. About 20 verses are there. And it has such in-depth description and knowledge that if you have to do PhDs, you can do 100 PhDs on these 20 verses. Such magnificent details are given about the concept of soul. So this is the basic understanding that is given, and these can be understood from different perspectives as well. So what is this soul? And what is the difference between the body and soul? That is what we're going to study right now. We're going to try to differentiate between what is matter and what is spirit. How is the soul different from my body in substance and in its longevity and in its different attributes? What is the basic differences? The first difference between body and soul. Can anybody quote some differences from what you know? What is the difference between the body and the soul? Give it a try.
మేడం బాడీ కనిపిస్తుంది సోల్ కనిపించదు.
Very nice. Very, very good. Body is externally visible, but you cannot see the soul. Very good. Inka?
Body will not last, ma'am, but soul will last.
Body is not lasting, but the soul is everlasting. Very good. Inka? I mean, I'm sure nobody more than the doctors will know this truth in a very, very proximal way, because we keep seeing. I remember the first day of my life at college, and I went to Usmania Medical College. I mean, OGH, Usmania General Hospital. The very first thing that I had to see was, I just entered the hospital and I saw, a lady sitting in front of a dead body and was crying so pathetically. This was the first day at the hospital, and my first day at my college, is anatomy lab. I had to go there. I saw a group of students sitting around and chit chatting, and when I went close and saw what they were sitting around a dead body, and they were chatting as if they're sitting around a coffee table. I still remember my first day at college at the anatomy table. It was really horrible. I mean, I couldn't digest that. First day at college or first day at hospital. Yes. Okay. Next, any other differences between body and soul? So one of you said the body is visible, soul is not visible. One of you said the body is not lasting, but the soul is everlasting. Any other? Inka? Anybody? You can give one more try. Okay, chalo, we'll go ahead. So body is composed of matter, while the soul is composed of spirit. Body is not conscious, but the soul is conscious. The body changes with time, and the soul does not change. It remains the same. So as one of you said, body is temporary and the soul is eternal. The body is dead matter, the soul is alive. So this is the basic difference between matter and spirit. So the body which we are all living in, this is the nature of this body. It is made up of matter. What is the matter that it is made of? We'll read that further. Panchabhutas, the 5 basic elements. Yeah, and the body is also not conscious. What we are conscious of this body because the soul is residing in the body. The moment the soul moves out of the body is no longer conscious. Yes. The body is subject to change. Like the body undergoes 6 changes technically, the 6 transformations which we are going to read further. The body is temporary in nature. Yeah, because we all know that right in front of our eyes, so many people keep dying. And this body is dead. The soul is just the opposite. So I will tell you a small story from Mahabharata. So in Mahabharata, if you see Yudhishthir Maharaj and all the Pandavas, they all go to Vanvas. So when they go to Vanvas, in the very initial days, they go to they feel very thirsty. So from getting water, Sahadev goes to fetch some water from a nearby lake. But this lake was guarded by a yaksha. Okay, yaksha. So this yaksha was eager to know some answers to his questions. So the moment Sahadev goes there, he says, "Behold." You all heard, yaksha prashnalu. So he says, "Behold, don't touch the water. First answer my questions, then you can take the water." Then Sahadev says, "No, first water, then only I will answer your questions." Then he tries to take the water and he dies. Then after that, Nakula comes. For a long time, Sahadev did not return. What happened? He tries to go and see. So he also tries to drink the water without answering questions. He dies. After that, Arjuna goes, he dies. After that, Bhima goes, he dies. And finally, Yudhishthir Maharaj goes. And Yaksha tells the same thing. My dear Yudhishthir Maharaj, you answer my questions. If you answer my questions, then you're eligible to take the water from my lake. And I will also bring back one of your brother back to life. It's a very nice story there. So during that time, Yaksha asks one question to Yudhishthir Maharaj. He asks, my dear Yudhishthir Maharaj, tell me, what is the biggest wonder of this world? He asked, what is the biggest wonder of this world? So Yudhishthir Maharaj did not say, he did not say Taj Mahal or, the hanging gardens of Babylonia, or the Egyptian pyramids. He didn't say any of this. You know what he said is the biggest wonder of this world? The biggest wonder of this world is that people are dying in front of us, but somehow we feel that death will not come to me. This is the biggest wonder of this world. And Yaksha was very happy with this answer. It's like, this was ahani ahani bhutani gachanti yamalayam sesham sthavaram icchanti kim ascharya matah param. It comes in Mahabharata. Ahani ahani bhutani gachanti yamalayam. All these living entities right in front of my eyes, they are dying and they're going to Yamalaya. Sesham sthavaram icchanti. That is, the remaining people, they want to but settle down on this earth very happily. Kim ascharya matah param. This is the most amazing thing of this world. So somehow we see that people around us are dying, but we somehow feel it won't happen to me. We might not be even consciously thinking of it, but subconsciously we are feeling that way. So why we feel that way, I will also explain it after some time towards the end of the class. So, as I said, you're not the body that you see in the mirror, just like, but you're the soul, the real driver of the bodily car. Like, there is a nice comparison that is given, that this body is compared to a chariot, or you can think it is compared to a car. And there is a car and a driver. Excuse me. There's a car and a driver. Excuse me. Like this. Wait, I'll show you. Yeah. Okay, you all can see this. So just like this car has a driver. And just like we put petrol in the car for the car to run, we put food in the stomach so that this body runs. And only foolish people think, like small children, let's say, they think that, when cars are like, especially if they're living in a very big apartments and they see the road from a distance and all the cars are moving, they think the cars are moving on their own. But a person with knowledge, they all know that the cars are not moving on their own. Inside there is a driver who is driving the car, and that's how the car is moving. Similarly, this body is moving because there is a driver within. Yeah, that's a comparison. So just like as I said, we put fuel to the car, we put food in the stomach. Just like there are these headlights, we have the eyes. Yeah, just like this. We also make sounds, just like the car makes sounds, and there's a carbonator inside the car, just like, which is a source of energy that gives the energy and momentum to the car. So similarly, we have the heart, and just like the car moves based on the wheels, we move with our legs. So that's an analogy to understand that, just like the car is not moving on its own, but it is moving because of the presence of the driver inside. Similarly, this body is not moving on its own. It is moving because there is the soul within. So another analogy to understand the body and the soul is, last week we have discussed about the cage and the bird inside. And there is a bird and there is a cage. The bird is like the soul and the cage is like the body. And sometimes we get so caught up in polishing the cage that we forget the bird within. So similarly, we are so caught up in beautifying our external body to the extent that we ignore the need and the presence of the soul within. That is when exactly a person feels that dissatisfaction in life. Yes, so we see this many of times. A person might be a very accomplished person, very he might or he or she might have reached, got all the wealth in life, all the opulences, the best of food, the best of clothes, the best of riches, the best of relationships, the best of esteem, the best of position, everything that somebody might hanker for, a person might have all of them, yet might feel very vacant in life, very lost in life. Why? The reason is this. That reason is simply that that person has polished very nicely the cage, but has forgotten to feed the bird within. Yes? Yeah. So this is what is a distinguishing factor. Am I matter or am I spirit? Yeah. So what is my real identity? Like, for example, I'll tell you a simple common sense. So you all, wherever you're present, you lift your hand and say, this is my hand, right? And you say, this is my leg, and this is my eye, right? This is my ear, this is my nose, this is my face. So every part of the body, I say, this is my. Then who am I? Important question, right? You don't say this is I hand, or you don't say this is I leg, or you don't say this is I face. This is my face, my hand, my legs. So who am I? So I'm not this body, right? Then what am I? So that's a self question one can ask oneself. So when you have understood that, yes, I am not this body, I am the soul, then what is this soul, this body? Yeah. Then you have given the analogy of the car. Yeah. Just like the soul is, the soul has, the body has a soul, the car has a driver. So is it that there is no difference between the body and the car? Let's see that. I want one of you to read this. Yeah. So is man not just a powerful computer or robo? Some people might say that, these days, especially robotics are trying, they're trying to be more and more progressive in their uh, manufacturing of newer and newer products. So is man not just a powerful computer or robo? Is there any difference between a powerful robo and a human being? Asal robots ki, human beings ki, what is the difference? Can anybody say, see, there is a robo also moves. Yeah. So robo also can talk. So robo can be programmed to do many activities that human beings can do. But what is the difference? And they can also think, calculate, and do some programs like a powerful computer. So what at the end of the day, what is the difference between a robo and a human being?
రోబోకి ఫీలింగ్స్ ఏమి ఉండవు, హ్యూమన్స్ కి ఫీలింగ్స్ అన్ని ఉంటాయి.
Excellent, Amma. Who answered?
రాజేశ్వరి
Rajeshwari, very, very good. Robos, they cannot feel. For example, a robo and me, both of us are sitting in a cinema theater and both of us are watching, let's say, a very touching movie. Yeah, asla movie choosing, I start crying when there is a sad scene is happening, or when there is a very nice scene, I start laughing. Yeah, but a robo cannot laugh or cry. It cannot feel for the pain, or it cannot feel the joy, or it cannot process those feelings. That is the difference between a robo and a human being. A human being has feelings, but a robo cannot have feelings. Yeah. So this is like, yeah, in that cinema theater. Robo, you can also compare with the lens in the camera. Yeah. It has no experience. But if you sit as a judge, you have your experience. They have no emotions. You have sorrow, anger. There is no consciousness, but you are conscious. So the lens or the robo, they cannot judge, but a human being can judge. For example, you see a movie అసలు బాగుందా లేదా? What is your opinion about the movie? So only a human being can give an opinion of the movie. A robo cannot give an opinion about the movie. It just watches. It just takes information. That's it. It cannot respond. So there is this conversation between this scientist and Swami Prabhupada. I want two of you to read it. One of you is the scientist, one of you is the Swami Prabhupada. Okay? So who will be the scientist? Yes, who wants to read?
Navya, ma'am.
Navya. Okay, Navya, you're the scientist. So who wants to be Swamiji? Navya is a scientist. Who is Swamiji?
Rajeshwari.
Rajeshwari. Okay, so now I will keep it just reading. Navya, please read about what the scientist is speaking.
Swamiji, I think our body is just a complex machine that gets worn out and crashes. Why should we bother about some soul powering the body?
Yes, now see what Swamiji is saying. Yes, Rajeshwari.
Does your car or computer grow? Do you have a male and female car that can unite and produce a baby car? A living body. Sorry,
Yes, yes, that's fine.
got some tension.
Mm.
6 changes.
Mm.
We are as matter, just depreciate. It is the soul that makes living body alive.
So the scientist is saying that body is just like a complex machine that gets worn out. ఇప్పుడు కార్ ఏమవుతుంది, it after some time it gets worn out, crashes. So if the soul is existing or not, how does it why should we bother about some soul powering the body? And the scientist is saying, then he's saying that Swami Prabhupada is saying body might be a machine, but can your car grow? Car does not grow, right? But if you see, the body grows. It undergoes 6 changes. What are those 6 changes? We will see. But matter just depreciates. So what is it that is making the body grow? See, the car is a dead matter. It cannot grow, right? It is as it is. But the body grows. Like, there are 6 changes that the body undergoes. First, it takes birth, it grows, it maintains itself, it produces some byproducts, produces children. Body reproduces and it produces children. But can a car produce a baby car? Can 2 cars unite and produce a baby car? Or can 2 cell phones unite and produce a baby cell phone? No. Only 2 bodies can unite and produce a baby. And fifth one is, after producing some byproducts, the body dwindles, and finally the 6th transformation is the body dies. These are the 6 transformations that a body undergoes. Yeah, but what is it that is making, the presence of which is making the body undergoes these 6 transformations, whereas a dead matter cannot undergo? So it is, Swami Prabhupada is telling, it is the soul that is making this body to live. Yeah. So that is what a living body undergoes the 6 changes. The bodies unite and can produce offsprings. And the living body has consciousness. That means consciousness ante you can think, feel and will. But the matter does not have consciousness. So these are the 6 transformation I was telling you about: birth, growth, maintenance, producing of byproducts, dwindling and death. And the body is undergoing this 6 changes. Why? Because of presence of the soul within. Imagine once the soul leaves the body, then none of this transformation happens. The body just perishes, right? The body can no longer grow. Only because of the presence of the soul, the body is growing. Once the soul leaves the body immediately perishes. Yeah, this is one more very, very important thing. There is something called a gross body and a subtle body. In Telugu, I will tell you what this is called. There is something called Sthula Shariram and Sukshma Shariram. Sthula means gross. And Sukshma means subtle. Gross means something you can, you can touch and see. And subtle means that which you cannot see. So the gross, the body can be divided into gross and subtle bodies. And the soul has the coverings that are gross and that are subtle. So what is this gross covering? Gross covering is the body, which is made up of the 5 basic elements. So this body is made up of 5 basic elements. What are these 5 basic elements? Pancha Mahabhutalu. What are the Panchabhutas? Anybody knows? Panchabhutalu ante enti? What are the?
ఆకాశం భూమి గాలి
Fire,
ఆకాశం
water,
భూమి
earth,
గాలి
ether,
వాటర్
Earth, water, fire, air and ether. This is the sequence in which you have to remember, because earth is the grossest element. Subtler than earth is water. Subtler than water is air. Subtler than water is fire. Subtler than fire is air, and subtler than air is ether. Ether is akasham, like one of you said. It's the space. So in our body, all these 5 elements are present. I'll tell you how to understand this. For example, when a body is burnt, once the body is dead, you burn it. Some ashes remain, right? So that is the earth element of the body. And there is water element in the body. What is this water element? The blood, the plasma, and all that flows. Yeah, the fluid content of the body. It is said almost 80%, right, of the body is composed of water. So all that is the water element in the body. So earth, water. There is fire element in the body. So where is this fire? We don't see any fire coming out of us. No, there is fire element. So this
digestion.
Fire. Endama?
Digestion.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. We say fire of digestion, right? Jhataragni. So without that fire, one cannot digest the food. Yes, very good. And the fire element is also seen in the temperature of the body. If you have ever touched a dead body, how does a dead body feel? It's cold. It's really cold. There is no life. The symptom of life is that, the 98.6 degree Fahrenheit. What is that normal temperature? That is maintained because there is some amount of fire within the body, which is making the body run, function, in an optimal level. So that is the fire element. Then there is also air. So air, the various, like if you have seen the pranayama, there are many airs within the body. Yeah. What is that? Mana, samana, udana, apana, samana, vyana, and there are like 5-6 airs that are in the body, which move in different direction. Apana vayu, we say, right? That is also kind of air. So there are different types of air within the body which make the body move. And there is also ether within the body. We can see it as the spaces, like the intracellular spaces and intracellular spaces. This is the ether element. So all these 5 elements compose the gross body. This is what this body is made up of. Yeah, Pancha Mahabhutas. So that is the gross body. And there is a subtle body that we have, the body that we cannot see. And what is the subtle body made of? Mind, intelligence, and ego. So subtler than this gross body is something called the mind. So we all have a mind, but can we see the mind? No. But can we say that it does not exist? No, it exists. There is a function of mind. The function of mind is thinking, feeling, and willing. This is the function of mind. And there is something called intelligence. Some people, some scientists say, for us, seeing is believing. Only if we see, we believe that it exists. Then fine. If you go and ask the same person, can you show me your intelligence? No, I cannot show. So does it mean it does not exist? No. You can only find its proof, its existence, by certain tests. Like for example, IQ. You have IQ tests. You take the IQ test, you get a score. That is a, kind of measurement of your intelligence quotient, IQ. So subtler than this mind is the intelligence. Subtler than this intelligence is something called the ego. So ego is the identification. So for example, if we are identifying ourselves with our body, that's a false ego. So, but we are identifying ourselves with our true self, that is the soul, that is real ego. So this ego is very, very subtle. That is the origin of, all the false identification. So this is the composition. This is the gross and subtle body, and this is these are what are covering the soul. Like two, the gross covering and the subtle covering, and inside is the Atma, the soul. So like this is the gross body, as I said, the 5 basic elements, and there is subtle body, which is mind, intelligence, and ego. And within that is the soul. And what is the nature of the soul? Yeah, what is the nature of the soul? What is the composition of the soul? As I said, gross body means 5 elements. Subtle body means mind, intelligence, and ego. Then what is soul? Soul is composed of Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Sat means eternality. Chit means knowledge. And Ananda means bliss. This is the composition of the soul. We've heard Satchidananda so many times, but did we ever try to realize that that is our true nature? Sat, Chit, and Ananda. And as long as the soul is covered over by these gross and subtle bodies, especially with the false ego, the real nature of the soul is not exhibited. Okay? Yeah, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So basically, then what happens at the time of death? Yeah, what exactly happens at the time of death is that the gross body, which is made of the 5 elements, it perishes. But the soul, along with the subtle body, moves into the next destination. That's the mechanism of reincarnation. We will see in the later part. But now we're going to study in a very scientific way whether this soul really exists or not. Yeah, till now we have seen what is stated in the Shastras, what is stated in the scriptures about the soul. But does it really exist? Is there any scientific evidence for the soul? So let us try and see that. Yeah. So first way of understanding whether the soul is really present or not, as I said in the earlier period, that it's a common sense that when somebody dies, we all cry saying that, oh, you have left. The body is lying there, but still we are saying you have left. That means whom you are crying for is actually not the body, because the body is right in front of you. Then, yeah, you say she passed away or he passed away. So when the body is there. So who has passed away? So this is a common sense understanding of the presence of the soul. Yeah, and also consciousness. Like only a human being can have memories. But this is one interesting aspect. There is something called near-death experience. There is this very famous scientist. His name is Michael Sabom. So Michael Sabom, he is a professor in the university, Emory University. yeah, Emory Medical College. He was a professor at that place, and he has done a very intense research on something called near-death experiences. So, what is this near-death experiences or out-of-body experience? So, he has studied and he has gathered about 200 such cases. So, what is this near-death experiences? That is, a person while being treated on the hospital bed, he is declared dead, clinically dead. So, when do you declare a patient to be clinically dead?
When his heart stops, ma'am.
So how do you technically see it? ECG. So ECG is flat. So the ECG is flat, the EEG flat, everything is flat. Yeah, even the body is lying flat on the bed. So when everything is flat, then you declare the person to be clinically dead. So many a times, many doctors have had this experience in their treatment that the patient is declared clinically dead, but after some time, like maybe a period of half an hour or after 1 hour, they come back to life and they exactly tell what has been happening in that hospital room in that half an hour. There are many instances where the doctors were operating on the patient, and in the process of operation the patient has actually dead. He was kind of, he lost his life, he died. But after some, they somehow continued the operation, and the patient actually rose above and in his subtle body, and from a higher position he was seeing what the doctors were actually seeing, doing. And after half an hour, he came back to life and he reported to the doctors what he had seen. He told them about, what are the instruments that you have used. Imagine, he was on general anesthesia and he's sleeping there. But he told, I have seen, these are the instruments that you have used. They even told about what these nurses were conversing with each other. Such details. And they came back to life after some time. Some patients, as I said, declared clinically dead. They came back to life after half an hour, and they started giving details about many things that were happening around. So these are called near-death experiences. And this person, Michael Sabo, he has gathered at least about 200 of these case studies. And after studying all of them, he came to the conclusion and he said, perhaps, that thing that is moving out of the body and going, which I call it as the mind being detached from the brain, probably this is what the spiritualists call as the soul. So this was his conclusion after studying all this 200 near death experiences. Actually, there are some many books that are written on this topic of OB and NDE. Yeah. Yeah, Michael Sabom, he's a cardiologist and professor of Emory University. Yeah, there was also research on eternal soul for 30 years by a surgeon called Dr. Byglow. And there are many, many books actually written on this subject matter about out of body experiences, near death experiences. If you are interested, you can actually pick up one and read. You'll have a lot of such case studies. And then further scientific proofs about reincarnation. So this is a very, very concrete evidence of what is called reincarnation or rebirth. We all have seen it sometime in our experience with movies. In movies, we see, right, that the heroine and hero are together in this life, they die, and in the next life again they unite. So these movies did not come out just like that, or it is not somebody's mental speculation. These movies came about because they have indeed seen certain situations, certain real life incidents where these things happen. Based on that, the movies are made. So there is a person whom you are seeing on the screen. He is called Sir Ian Stevenson. Ian Stevenson, he's the father of reincarnation studies. He has studied at least 2,000 cases of reincarnation. Yes, he's of psychiatry. Yeah, at University of Virginia. And he has extensively investigated. In fact, some of his students are there in NIMHANS, yeah, National Institute of Mental Health and Sciences in Bangalore. Yeah, he had some students there where the lady, she herself had studied 150 cases from India. And these 2000 cases which he has recorded is from all over the world, which spoke about the past life memories of people, of various subjects. So what are these case studies? He has noted or recorded the case studies wherein young children who are about 4 or 5 years old, or at least are starting from 3 years, they started speaking in a language that is totally different from their language. Like, for example, you're born in a Telugu family, all of a sudden a 3-year-old starts speaking in Tamil or Malayalam or Punjabi, let's say. So these are the kind of records that he has had, and they have spoken in a totally different dialect. And they started giving references to some home, or to some other place where they belong to, or to some relations that they were attached to, from a, in a very very different place altogether. And when he researched, he found out that all these things that these people are giving are indeed true. So I will tell you, I will share with you two real life such incidents. One incident which I'm more excited to tell is about, actually, when this whole, what I'm presenting to you, this whole course, this was actually presented in another college in, I think, Maharashtra, in some college in Maharashtra, in Pune or Bombay, I don't know. So when they were presenting, uh, what happened is one student got up, he stood up and he said, actually, sir, you're presenting this whole thing, what we are all just seeing. And he said, I am also a case of past life memory. And his name is Deep Kapadia. Yeah. And he started telling about, and he brought the paper cuttings and the news articles of his life history. And he started sharing with this, the teacher who is presenting this particular incident. So I will tell you what was his story. This actually even came in the newspaper. This Deep Kapadia, when he was 3-year-old, 4-year-old, he started telling his parents that my house actually is in Udaipur. I don't belong to this place. I belong to Udaipur. And he started speaking in some other language. So the parents were worried, and they took him to a psychologist. So the psychologist said, then, okay, fine, cool, we will see. And the psychologist said, after discussing with the parents, without the knowledge of the boy, he said, we will take you to Delhi, yeah, for having further tests done. And they said that, and they took the boy in the train to Delhi. And they did not tell that, we are going through Udaipur. They did not mention anything about Udaipur. So the train stopped at Udaipur. So when the train stopped at Udaipur, the boy got off. He said, please come off. This is where I actually stay. The parents and the psychologist, they were, something like this would happen. This little boy, he took them and into the interiors of the village of Udaipur. And he took them to a big castle, which is now turned into a museum. And he said, this is where I used to work as a head security guard. And he took them into interior of the village, and he showed some people and said that this is my father, this is how, this is my, family. He named each and every one of them. And after that, he again went back to this castle, and he showed, this is where I used to work as a security person. And he took to the interiors of that castle. And to their astonishment, he also showed that here is a painting, and he said, remove this painting, there is a tunnel inside, there is a secret chamber inside. So they unscrewed that big painting, and they actually did find a tunnel, a secret chamber. And it was a dark chamber. And he took them inside, and inside there was a old fan which was about 200 years old. And he said, and nobody knows how to operate it, because it used to run by a kerosene. Nobody knows how to actually make it work. So when everybody was watching, as if it was a technique that he had known always, he poured some kerosene into that fan, and he did something, and fan started functioning, you know, to that detail he was so confidently presenting. So everybody understood that, you know, this cannot be, you know, a random event of some aberration of the mind. It has to be some case of something coming from the past life. So this was an instance of reincarnation that was recorded, you know, the boy from Udaipur. And there's another interesting case called Shukla. I will share with you this case of, there are many such cases. In fact, we can also relate to the, you know, some people have certain phobias. So some people have phobias for heights. They cannot stand great heights, or some people are scared of water, or some people are scared of weapons, because actually these phobias are coming from past lives. That could be the, you know, somehow related to how they have died in the previous life. This is what Ian Stevenson writes. So phobias are related to the mode of death of the person whose life is being remembered. So it's like this. This is what Ian Stevenson remarks. And the presence of the soul is further evidenced by the finding that there are twins. Twins are born of the same mother, right? You know, we have this, uh, you know, the same egg splits, and that's how the twins are manifested. They're born in the same conditions of the mother's womb, and they're grown in the same environment. But if you see, both the twins have two different temperaments, two different tastes altogether. That in itself is a evidence that they have two different souls. Yeah. So two different souls incarnated in two different bodies. They're genetically identical. Yeah, there is this, I will send you this video. Just give me a reminder, huh? I mean, I keep forgetting. Just give me a reminder. This is a very interesting video about, there's this boy, his name, you know, the boy whom you're seeing here, he at 4 years old, he started telling about how he was actually a pilot in his previous life. He took his parents into a jet, and he showed them every detail of how you know, a jet plane operates in the war. And when they realized that he actually, his name is Phillips or something, he gave the details of his past life, in the war in which he died, and how he died, how he met with an accident and he died. He told about how this jet plane operates with the minutest details. I will send you the video. It's very interesting. And there are these famous scientists who actually vouch for the presence of reincarnation, like Benjamin Franklin, then John Adams and Socrates. He said, I'm confident that there truly is such a thing as living again, and the living spring from the dead. So this is what is the realization of people after their experience of life. Yeah, so this is one more interesting case study by Ian Stevenson about Shukla Gupta. So Shukla Gupta, when she was a small child, yeah, so when she was a small kid of 2 to 3 years old, she used to carry a doll, and she used to say Meenu, Meenu, and she used to, you know, pet her, and she was so attached to the doll. So parents initially thought maybe it's some kind of a like, you know, all children play with dolls naturally, and so maybe this child is also fond of this doll and she's playing. But after some time, some months, when she started uttering the word so many times, and she told her parents, this Meenu is my daughter, and now I want to go and meet my daughter. They were like, you know, what's wrong with her? And she said that they were actually living in a village called Ratkala, some district in Bengal. And she says that the place I belong to is Bhatpara. Bhatpara is actually a district far away, and the father of Shukla Gupta, he didn't know that place actually that existed, but he used to work in the railways. So he actually inquired from some people in railways that, you know, does this place called Bhatpara exist? And they said, yes, it does exist, in fact. And based on the details that Shukla Gupta was giving, he tried to go, and she even started telling about the names of her husband, her father in the previous life, and her brother-in-laws. So her father started, doing some inquiry about that place and whether some girl has died. So he actually got to know from one of his colleagues' brother-in-law that yes, indeed, a girl of that name existed in that place, and these are the names of the family members. So the father further wanted to know the validity of what this child is speaking about. So without telling anything to the child, they took her actually to this place. Yeah, his name is Sri Sen Gupta. Yeah, the name of the father. So they journeyed with her to Patpara, and when they arrived into that village, actually Shukla took the lead. She took the lead and she led the people into the house. And after entering into the house, so when she actually initially when they the interesting part is when she came to that house, she was like little surprised. She said, no, this is not how we go into the house, we go through other direction. Then actually the family members came out and told, yes, earlier the entrance was here, but after she died, we closed this entrance and we made another entrance. So to that extent, she gave the details of that family. So and she took them to her father-in-law Amritlal Chakravarti, and she actually recognized the house of her previous life. So her mother-in-law's brother-in-law, husband, daughter, and and there were a group of about 20 people sitting there, and she showed who is my husband with the name, Sri Haridhana Chakravarti. This is my husband. And she even told the favorite uh, dish of her husband in the past life. And actually they had shown her daughter Meenu, and she hugged her daughter, who was now actually much elder to her, and she even started crying, my dear Meenu, how are you, and natural feelings of mother sprang out of her, at that small age of 5 years. So this is a real life incident that has happened, life of Shukla. So in that way, actually, there are many, many, many such real life incidents that, as I said, there are 2,000 such incidents that were recorded by Ian Stevenson. So what does all this prove? So what is this reincarnation study? What is it coming to, what point is it coming to? What is the conclusion that we can make from this reincarnation study? That means currently we are in a particular body, but in the past life also, in the past life we existed in a different body. Like in this life, she is Shukla. In the past life, she's some other lady by some other name, with some other set of parents, some other set of relations, and some other set of people around her. And in this life, she is Shukla with another set of people around her, whom she's actually calling them her parents. So what is the common thing in these both bodies? It's the same soul that is journeying through one body to another. So what is the mechanism of reincarnation? What is exactly happening in the process of reincarnation is that if you see that the soul at the time of birth, it takes birth, it grows from boyhood to youth to old age, and then it dies. After death, it is going to another body. That is what Bhagavad Gita is saying. देहिनोस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहांतर प्राप्ति धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति. देहिनोस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं jara. That means kaumaram means boyhood, yauvanam youth, jara old age. So the same soul is passing through these three, all the phases of the body. Like for example, you all take out your old photo album, when you were a 3-year-old child. So there is so much of difference between how you looked at that time and what you are now. And 30 years from now, you are a totally different person. Right? And also in the field of science, it is said that all the cells of the body change in every 7 years. Then what is it that is remaining constant? Observing the whole thing that's happening. That is the soul. And what happens at the time of death? Tatha dehantara prapti. After kaumaram, yavanam, jara, after old age, what happens? The body dies, but tatha dehantara prapti, you're given another body. after death. Dhiras tatra mohyati. A person in knowledge who is sober is not bewildered by such a change. So this is what, yeah, and what is based on, I mean, and what body we get in the next life, it depends upon two things: what we desire and what we deserve. These are the two things based on which we get the next body. Yeah, like for example, if yeah, you have the as I said, yeah, as a person puts on new dress, and how does this thing happen? Just like vashamsi jeedani yatha vihaya, just like we put on new clothes after removing old clothes, similarly when this body dies, yeah, it's like the old clothes being removed, and then you take a new body. That means you're wearing new clothes. So body is just like a cloth. Just like you all have gloves, right? Hand gloves. This glove has its existence because the hand is inside the glove. But you remove the hand and you put the glove aside, the glove does not hold any shape. Similarly, the hand is like the soul and the glove is like the body. And just like the hand moves, the glove moves. Similarly, because of the presence of the soul within, the body moves. The soul is gone, the body is dead. It does not move any further. The body is like a dress for the soul. So yeah, so on what basis the soul is awarded the next body? As I said, it depends upon your consciousness at the time of death. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajati ante kalevaram tam tam eva iti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitam. That means if you have good consciousness, you are given good bodies. If you have animalistic consciousness, we are given animalistic bodies. So whatever state of being a person remembers when he quits the body, that state he will attain without fail. Like for example, if you see some Westerners, especially they don't have any relationships around. So they're very attached to their dog. They're very attached to their cats. If not cat and dog, you know, somewhat, there are some Westerners who are attached to the lizards. You can't believe what all animals they start pampering and petting. So if your whole consciousness is revolving around that animal, you know, some of the people, what kind of luxuries they create for their dog or pet animals, it's unbelievable. They have a separate bathroom for their dog, separate set of clothes, a big nice plate. In fact, they're treated better than some best of the VIP guests. Yeah. So if you're so fascinated and attached to this animals, in the next life you're given the body of that animal, because so you're so attached to that. So whatever you're attached in, you know, that thing comes to your consciousness at the time of death. Like for example, you might have seen some of your grandparents or somebody, you know, grandparents, when they are about to die, they actually remember those persons they're very much attached to, and they want to see them. Yeah, why? Because that which you're most attached to in your life, that is what comes to your mind at the time of death. That is why it is very important to develop good attachments. If you're attached to your cat or dog and you remember that at the time of death, you'll be given that body only. Unfortunate. So that's the law of nature. Yeah, so desires and what we deserve means based on our karmas. Based on the desires and based on our karmas, we are awarded the next body. Just like we have discussed, why is somebody born as Ambani and why is somebody is born as the beggar in the street? Both might be having the desire to have a lot of money, but you should also deserve, right? You should also have good karmas in your account. So based on the karmas and desires, you are given the next body. Yes. So these are all, when we engage in sinful life, we are given a lower form of life. And when we lead a responsible life, we are given a good body with good, in a good family, with good intelligence, with good looks, and with good attributes, so that we execute the purpose of life. Yeah, there are 4 pillars of sinful life, which is intoxication, drugs, illicit sex, and meat eating and gambling. These are, you know, there is something called, there are 4 pillars of dharma, And there are 4 pillars of sinful life. One has to give up these 4 pillars of sinful life. Yeah, because when we are executing these 4 sins, we degrade into a lower species and we are leading an irresponsible life. But at the same time, if you lead a responsible life following religious principles, what happens? We are leading a pure life of austerity, of knowledge, of sacrifice, of good association. Then we get good birth. Yeah. So till now we have seen about uh, the mechanism of reincarnation, how it happens. As I said, the body takes on newer bodies just as you shed old garments and you take new garments. And there are 2 principles which define what will be your next birth. That is what you desire and what your karmas are. These 2 come together to decide what will be your next body. So now we have understood now till date what is a soul and what is God. So there are some philosophies which start saying that, you are only God. You are God, I am God, everyone is God. Is that true? No. We are not gods, but we are gods. That means we are not gods, G-O-D-S, but we are gods, G-O-D apostrophe S. That means we belong to God, but we are not God. So the soul is called Jivatma or the Atma that we have studied. Huh? Soul is Atma. Then who is God? God is Paramatma. Yeah. Paramatma means he's Vibhu. He's superior. He's not like the Jiva. He's the origin of the Jiva. Just like a drop of water in the ocean is different from the ocean, but it is one in quality. Like a drop of water in the ocean is salty. I mean, it tastes like, how the ocean tastes. But can you say the drop is ocean? No. So similarly, this drop is part and parcel. The Atma is part and parcel of God, but he is not, or the Jiva is not God in themselves. That's a difference. So I'm the tiny Jiva, not the ultimate God. Tiny part and parcel, servant of the God. Okay. So this is the Supreme Lord Krishna, and how he is the one who is the mastermind behind the mysterious universe. And in actually Gita, there are many, many verses where Krishna speaks about how he has created the universe and how he has remained behind Sutre Manigana Iva, like a pearl is strung on this, like the pearls are strung on a string. That's how Krishna is permeating through all the universes and holding them. And he is the seed-giving father for all living entities. Aham bija pradapita. In Bhagavad Gita, in many verses, Krishna gives a complete science of who is Ishvara, that is God, and who is Jiva. In fact, Bhagavad Gita deals about these 5 basic truths. What are these 5 basic truths? The 5 basic truths are Ishvara, Jiva, Kala, Karma, and Prakriti. Ishvara is the science of God. Jiva, the science of the soul. Kala, time. Karma, activities. And Prakriti, that is the material nature. And the interrelationships between all these 5. This is the subject matter of Gita, which is actually called Rajavidya, the king of all knowledge. So that is Krishna, who is the doer, and he's omni. Yeah, another difference between God and the soul, the Jiva and Paramatma, is Jivatma and Paramatma is the Lord is. We are conscious of only our body, right? I can only know what is happening with my body. That is, if I have a pain in my finger, I feel it, but I cannot feel the pain of somebody else's what a person is going through in their body. At the same time, I cannot even know what is going on in the other person's mind. That means I'm conscious of only my body. But the Supreme Lord, God, is omniscient. That means he knows about every nook and corner, whatever is happening in this entire creation. And he is conscious of every thought that I might have thought, not just in my this birth, but through all my births. in the past, in the present, and in the future also. That's what is called omniscience. Not just me, but each and every living entity. He has a record of each and every of it. So that is Paramatma. We cannot even begin to imagine what is actually the difference between Jiva and Paramatma, Jivatma and Paramatma. So he's omniscient and omnipotent. That means the Lord can do anything. He has a free will. But Jiva has limited free will and limited potency. We have only limited control of things. But the Lord is a supreme controller. He controls everything. Yeah, so we're just a tiny Jiva cast in the material ocean. Yes. So that's all. That's the difference between the soul and super soul or the Paramatma. So now let us come to what are the practical benefits after I have understood this reality. Yeah. Okay, I understood that I am not this body, I am the soul. I understood through scientific proofs, and I understood through Shastra Praman, that is through Shabda, that actually, I am this soul and that is my identity and I'm not this body. So how is it going to help me? Is it just a piece of information? Or has it something to do practical, with my life? This understanding helps in innumerable ways in our life. First of all, it helps us understand what is our true nature. What is the true nature of the soul? That every soul is divine in nature. It is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. Satchit Ananda. So what is actually that is a purpose of education. The education comes from the root word educare. Excuse me. So education comes from the root word educare. Educare in Greek means to uncover what is within a person. That means internally you are something, what you originally are, and education is helping you to uncover what you truly are. That is real meaning of education. So originally the soul is divine by nature, and education is meant to invoke and bring out that divine nature of yours, which truly is your nature. But the modern day definition of education is totally different. Modern day education is all about information, 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 and no transformation. Isn't it? But actually, that is the purpose of education. The very meaning of education is to discover yourself, your true nature, which is divine and not demoniac. So when you start discovering and evolving into your true divine nature, the demoniac nature in a person, which is manifested in the form of anger, in the form of rebellious natures, in the form of doing demoniac activities, all that nature will be, a person can be freed from it. Person acquires freedom from demoniac nature. Like, how does demoniac nature come? Like we see in so many students say, I don't care. Like, there's this famous slogan, Nike t-shirts. Yeah, Nike means just do it, don't care. Because after, we only live for a few years, so enjoy to the fullest. So if that enjoyment means breaking of all rules and regulations, all the principles of dharma, I don't care. This is I don't care nature comes when a person does not understand the nature of the soul, the reality of one's existence and identity. That careless nature comes, and they get into all sinful activities because they don't understand that there is some, they have no concept of dharma, they have no concept of what is pure life and why should we lead a pure life and what is one's true nature. But when a person understands what is their divine nature, then they become responsible people. They understand that my actions will create good and can create good or bad future. That means I am the maker of my destiny, so I have to live in a responsible way. In that way, people live in a very responsible life once they understand their true nature and how this whole material world functions. especially a person who has gone through the study of Bhagavad Gita, amazing transformation. They can really live life in the most meaningful way that brings true fruition to their own life and to the lives of everybody around them. Yeah. Then divine qualities. What are divine qualities? Patience, love, compassion. Yeah. Then tolerance, humility, cheerfulness. All these are, divine qualities. They naturally manifest in a person, and all the demoniac qualities like arrogance, lying, anger, deceit, simply screaming at others and trying to exploit others, all this demoniac nature automatically diminishes and eventually vanishes the more and more a person understands one's true nature. This is just one benefit of understanding the nature of soul. What is the second benefit? Freedom from lamentation, fear, and illusion. So many students ask me that they want to develop this self confidence. This is the most authentic, scientific, and the Vedic way of developing true self confidence within yourself. I have seen many people who have taken up the study of Gita. They have become such confident individuals. I think our own Kavya, she can tell. I mean, her experience. I remember her sister told me that earlier, whenever she used to not make it through some exams, yeah, she was very. I mean, she can tell it in her own words. Kavya, can you tell us how uh, the study of Gita and discover yourself, how it helped you?
Yes.
Yeah, please tell.
The studies actually helps us to know about ourselves, and by gaining knowledge from this, I'm able to understand that like everything is temporary, and we shouldn't be lamenting over all the things that is happening over us, and we have to understand why it is happening, and we have to change our consciousness, and we have to always try for the better things, ma'am. Means how to change ourselves and how to motivate ourselves and how to lead a life accordingly. It helped me a lot, ma'am, because in every stage in our life we will face some or the other difficulties and problems.
Yeah.
There will not be always everyone with us to help us all the time. So we have, when we know about ourselves, so we ourselves only can cross that stage of problem by taking higher associations. So I really recommend every student in this class, means who have joined in this lecture, uh, once I have to fully feel it and try to implement in their lives. It will really change up our heart, ma'am. Really. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kavya. So, if you all know, Kavya is a very bright student. She's in fact a gold medalist from Andhra University from Vizag. Yeah, she has really taken up this whole course of DYS and also Gita, and she's been a very wonderful student. She's also practicing chanting of the holy names along with us every morning. So actually, in fact, I mean, today this is the first time I'm hearing directly from Kavya, but like I heard from her elder sister that we are very happy that Kavya has now become a much stronger person, much more positive about her. She's able to handle, also drawbacks in life in a more confident way, and she's more balanced. So much so, her father is also very pleased with her. So this is what I heard from your sister, Kavya.
Yes, ma'am. Really.
So yeah, that's now what I'm telling you is just a practical example. Okay, so I mean this is not just what you're seeing on the screen, but we have a live, many actually examples of how spiritual understanding of life, the concepts of Gita especially, can make a person very strong and person understand what is the purpose of life, goal of life, and in that way they become very efficient and productive in their lives. and confident individuals. Okay. So this is freedom for lamentation. Like, for example, this is what if a person fails in maths, let's say, they become very, very depressed. Arey, life ho gaya. Some people even commit suicide. But a person who understands about the truth of life and the goal of life, even if there are failures in one life, they understand that this can be dealt with in a positive way. That's the second. Third one is understanding soul. It promotes universal brotherhood. You know, the whole World Health the UNO, United Nations organizations, UNICEF, all these are trying so hard to promote something called universal brotherhood. But we always hear, especially in the recent time, how much of havoc has happened in the name of racism in the US. But if this concept of the true identity as a soul and the body just being a covering is understood by the world at large, then universal brotherhood is the most natural outcome. Because I'm a black African, that means I am wearing an African dress, or I'm wearing a European dress, or I'm wearing an Indian dress. It's just the dress that we are wearing. But internally, we are all the same souls who are eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, and we are the same divine beings. That's the basic foundational concepts that can promote universal brotherhood. So oftentimes we are hearing the worst of wars, jihad, ye, wo, and all that. They all happen because of identifying that I am a Muslim, or I am a Pakistani, or I am an Indian. This is all bodily identification. But deep within, we are the same souls. Yeah. The same Sat Chit Ananda. It is all. There is no difference. Yeah, and in the picture whom you're seeing are actually they're Jews, Germans, the white and black, but they all come together and they celebrate their love for God. Once you understand this concept, if you know Jews and Germans, they are the worst of enemies, worse than even India and Pakistanis. But they have become best of friends after having understood this foundational principles of Gita, and they're practicing it in their lives. They've become some of the best friends. So it promotes great relationships beyond the bodily conceptions. And it promotes positive outlooks and attitude towards life. This is what we all are wanting, right? We want to be positive. We want to have a good attitude to life. This is a natural outcome of developing a spiritual understanding and having certain spiritual practices and leading a spiritual lifestyle, adopting a spiritual lifestyle. By doing this, one becomes more self-disciplined, more efficient, more confident, with a positive attitude in life and positive outlook towards life. And you can actually do many, many more things, achieve things beyond even what you plan to achieve in life. Yeah. So that is another thing. And best of all is you live in harmony with nature and you experience the true satisfaction of the self because of adopting spiritual culture in your life. Yeah. So we face any challenges in life with more positivity. And one more most important, beautiful aspect is you become a true environmentalist, because you become responsible to use the resources around you in a more responsible way. You see life in everything, in plants, in animals, and you treat them with due respects and you care for your environment. You become more responsible individuals towards the whole world. Yeah, you're not, we don't get this exploitative mentality about the universe around us. Rather, we take care of them. Yeah, so you make right use of the resources around you. Imagine if every person has to become this, what would the world be? In fact, actually the calamities, the pandemics that we are facing right now, it's because of the misbehavior of human beings, because of man's exploitation of nature. That is why these calamities come about. If not, the earth is a beautiful place that is to live in. And the Lord has blessed this whole earth with such abundance. There is no famine. The famine is an artificial creation because of mismanagement of the resources by exploitative human beings. Yes, because they don't have this awareness of their self. But developing the spiritual awareness, a person becomes more responsible, more non-exploitative of resources and all these benefits. What are these benefits? As a matter of summarization, there is freedom from demoniac nature, freedom from lamentation, there is universal brotherhood, there is positive outlook, and there is when you start doing mantra meditation, there is peace. In fact, in the US, there is a university that has conducted a research on the amount of stress levels in a person before and after mantra meditation, and this research has proved that after mantra meditation, the amount of stress that a person is facing has considerably, remarkably reduced. So every day, actually, even me, Kavya, and a group of students, we come together, and early morning at the Brahma Muhurta time, 5:30 onwards, we come together and we do this mantra meditation for some time, and it really makes the whole day very beautiful and peaceful. If anybody wants to join, I can send you the link. So right use of resources. So this a person also, individual also becomes very responsible for the resources, the natural resources around, and there is no exploitation. So these are some few of the benefits of understanding the science of soul. So in summary, this is what we have studied today. We've learned about am I matter or am I spirit? We learned about the 6 changes, the scientific proofs, mechanism of reincarnation, difference between soul and God, and we learned what are the practical benefits. So am I matter or am I spirit?
Matter.
Yes. Am I matter or am I spirit?
We are spirit.
We are spirit. What is the difference between matter and spirit? For the body and soul, what is the difference?
Body doesn't have consciousness.
The body have
Yes. Body does not have consciousness, soul has consciousness. One more difference?
body has changes, soul has no changes.
Yeah, body does not, body changes, the soul does not change. Any more?
Body has temporary, soul is eternal.
Excellent. Body is temporary, soul is eternal. Wonderful. Any more?
Body is dead and soul is alive.
Excellent. Body is dead and soul has life. Amazing. So this is exactly the difference between the body and soul. So how can you tell I am the soul and I am not the body? One example. What is the most common sense way of understanding I am not this body and I am the soul?
When a person dies, they say he passed away. Even still, the body is in front of him.
Yes, it's the most common sense way of understanding. When a person dies, you say the person passed away, while the body is right in front of us. It's a common sense understanding. Also, this exercise, my hand, my ears, then who am I? So I'm not this body. So what are the 6 changes that the living body undergoes? First is the body takes birth. Second, grows. Third,
Maintenance.
excellent.
Fourth, reproduction.
Produces. Fifth,
Dwindling.
dwindles, and finally dies. Wonderful. Amazing. Very nice. And what are the signs? Yeah. So how do you scientifically prove that soul is existing? What are some scientific evidences?
Reincarnation.
Reincarnations, yes.
Near-death experience.
Near-death experiences, excellent.
Out-of-body experience.
Out-of-body experiences, wonderful. So who was this one scientist who is the father of reincarnation studies?
Stevenson.
Ian Stevenson. Excellent.
Ian Stevenson.
Wonderful. Amazing. Actually, you all can teach this whole study. Very nice. Then, so what is the mechanism of reincarnation? How, on what basis the soul acquires? Achha, so yeah, tell me what are the coverings of the soul?
Subtle body, gross body.
Yeah, what is the gross body made of?
Air, water,
5
fire,
elements.
ether.
Yeah, the 5 elements, which are
Panchabhut.
Panchabhutas: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Okay, then what is the subtle body composed of?
Mind,
Mind,
ego,
intelligence, ego.
Intelligence.
Ego. Excellent. This is a subtle body. And what is the nature of soul? Yeah, what is the nature of the soul?
it is eternal.
There are 3, right? Eternal,
Blissful.
yes, full of bliss,
Intelligence.
full of knowledge. Yeah, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Sat means eternal, Chit means full of knowledge, Ananda means bliss, full of bliss. This is the nature of the soul. So, what is the mechanism of reincarnation? What happens at the time of death? What happens at the time of death? Okay, on what basis you are awarded the next body?
The desires we have at the time of the death.
Yes, desires, and there is one more factor, na?
Karma.
Very good. Desire and karma. I might have a lot, desire that I want to be a king or a prince, but I should have that good karma also, na? So only desire is not sufficient. Karma is also needed, and only good karma is not sufficient. Desire is also important. So both these things together, they they define what will be the next body. And how does the soul move to the next body at the time of death? The soul, along with the subtle body, moves into the next body. Okay, so we also read about what is the difference between soul and God. What is the difference between Jivatma and Paramatma?
Jivatma is a part of Paramatma.
Wonderful. Jivatma is a part and parcel of Paramatma. One more difference.
Control over everything by
The
Paramatma.
Yeah, God is the supreme controller, whereas a Jiva has limited control. One more difference. One more difference. We also spoke about omniscience. God is omniscient. The Paramatma is omniscient. Omniscient means he's aware of everything of the universe and everybody and what's in everybody's mind. But the soul is conscious of only one's personal body. Okay, that's the difference between few differences between soul and God, Jivatma and Paramatma. So, what are some practical benefits of the knowledge of soul in everyday life?
One can leave the demonic nature and have divining.
Yes, one can bring out one's divine nature and one can be free from one's demoniac nature. Yes, the very, very practical benefit. You can develop godly qualities because of understanding this, one's own tattva. Any more practical benefits?
We can be humble to the nature.
We live in harmony with nature. Any more?
Lamentation, illusion, and fear.
There is freedom from lamentation, freedom from illusion. Very, very good. Yes, these are all the practical benefits. Any more?
Righteous of
Universal brotherhood.
Universal brotherhood and right use of resources. Excellent. Universal brotherhood.
positive outlook,
Outlook and attitude to life.
Yes, positive outlook and attitude towards life. This is all something we are striving so much for, right? But these are all natural outcomes and byproducts of learning the concept of soul and actually living by this understanding. Very good, very nice. You all have understood complete chapter completely and very beautiful revision. If you have any questions, you can ask me or you can post it in the group. I will try to answer in the group. Thank you all very much. Have a nice week ahead. It is wonderful being with all of you. So we will meet next week for the 5th session. So this is the next session, session 5, substance and shadow, how to differentiate. Yes. Okay, so it was a pleasure being with all of you. We will meet again next week. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I will meet next week.